Hi, I'm Bruce Soord from The Pineapple Thief, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Medina with Sonic Perspectives. Today we are going to be talking with the Pineapple Thief's main mastermind, Bruce Soord. Welcome to the interview, Bruce.
Hey, yeah, great to be here, thanks.
Yeah, so this new album of yours is coming out in a little over a month's time, Dissolution. And just to start off, I'm curious, what excites you about this new album?
I think for me, it's funny, isn't it? Having been in doing this for so long, I think I started it on my own back in 1999, but it feels like a new band. You know, we finished the last album, Your Wilderness, and with Gavin Harrison, more as a session guy, although he'll admit now that, you know, that it became more than just a session. And we went off and toured together, got on really well, and then we all knew what we wanted to do. We all wanted to get together, the four of us, with Gavin as a permanent member, and write a new record. And Gavin was there from day one, and we got on really well as a creative sort of duo. You know, instead of me writing loads of songs, I would have ideas. I'd send them to Gavin. He'd send them back. He'd record in his studio, send me drum ideas. It would send me off in different directions, and it just created this album that, you know, I never thought that I could ever create. You know, because you can't, because it was a true collaborative effort. So I'm really excited, and we spent so long. We spent 6 months every day talking, working on it, living with it 24/7 until it was perfect. I mean, that was 6 months of being in the studio for 6 months. So yeah, I'm really proud of it.
So it sounds like this album really, more than any previous Pineapple Thief album, is more of a collaborative effort. Is the songwriting actually shared, or are you still the main songwriter, and then the other guys, and especially Gavin, you know, gave little arrangement ideas?
No, I think Gavin's input especially went further than just, you know, arrangement. I think, and we certainly got dual songwriting credits on the album. But, you know, obviously I still come up with the themes and the lyrics and the melodies. But Gavin would then take them and he would chop them around, and he would say, "Hey Bruce, no, I like that, but I'm getting a bit bored here. Let's do this. How about taking it this direction?" And he would jam out some rhythmic ideas and cut and paste some of my melodic ideas, and then I go, "Oh wow, that's great, yeah." And then I would take it back and I go, "Yeah, this is." And some of the songs just took a life of their own, and I remember just thinking, "Wow, I would never have taken this song down this alleyway if it wasn't for Gavin having that sort of creative input." And so for that reason, I'd say that it's more than just, it is a songwriting contribution. And the same with the other two guys, Steve and John, Steve on keyboards and John on bass. I gave them a complete blank canvas, and some of the things they came up with were like, wow, you know, this is good. They've made it so different to how I would have done it. And in the early days, I was a real control freak. I just did everything, and it had to be my way, and it must be like that. But I feel really privileged, actually. It sounds cheesy, but I do. I feel privileged that I'm in a band where everyone is on the same page, and we all get on creatively so well.
Sounds like you've really entered a new phase for the band now. It really sounds fresh.
Yeah. That's what's so exciting. It feels like just a new beginning.
Yeah. The theme of Dissolution sounds like it's about breaking down our society's interconnectedness, whether it's in relationship or disenchantment with social media and technology. Is that fairly accurate?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think thematically, Pineapple Thief albums have been quite similar in that I'm always writing about the human psyche in this context of the society that I'm growing up in, you know, in the changing society that I'm growing up in. And it's really changed so much over the last sort of 5 years, maybe even 2 years, in the sort of technological revolution that we've lived through. And I think that when history looks back on this time and reassesses, what were we doing? What were we doing right? And what were we doing wrong? I think that they all admit that a lot has gone wrong. And it's a bit like an addiction, it's a bit like a drug, like an alcohol or heroin or cocaine. Nobody really knows when it's a problem because it's so new. And it's only now that big tech companies are talking about addictions, smartphone addictions, and the mental health problems that children are growing up with, and it certainly affected my mental health. I'm not saying that I've gone crazy or anything, but being connected to so many people, to so many things, to having access to so much information, so many opinions is just unnatural and exhausting. And as a musician, it goes one step further because you are connected to all of your listeners, and you get an insight into what they think about you, even if and some of these things are just horrible as well, and some of the lyrics in the record, the very first track, not naming any names, is specifically about those people, the people that just want to weaponize social media and these connections and cause people harm. And so as a musician, growing up in these times, you've got to have a thick skin, and people have to, if people want to do what we do and get your music out there, you've got to be prepared to take it, to take these to understand that it's a battleground out there in many ways. But yes, that's what it is. That's the theme that connects the entire record.
And to prove your point about the disconnection because of technology, did you guys ever consider recording the album together in one studio rather than relying on sharing files to record the parts?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. That's the irony, isn't it? Here I am, berating this technology when we wouldn't be here without this technology. So I've got to be very careful in what I say. I mean, obviously, the big thing, is that when the technology came along, it was great and it did a wonderful thing and it was very positive. And then, like anything that's a free for all and a bit of an anarchy, it's the negative powers seem to overwhelm it, and that's what's happened. But in the context of the band, we did it all remotely, even though, because we had this technology, we were able to talk to each other every day. We would have all four of us on video conferencing, and sharing audio and there and then and discussing where we wanted the album to go. But nothing really replaces that traditional romantic, view of notion of a band getting in a sweaty room, getting drunk, writing songs and recording them, and having 6 weeks from a big record deal, a record company advance to do it. Those days are probably over. But I was talking to Gavin actually about it, and we were talking about next time and spending a couple of weeks together. I'd probably go up to Gavin's place and we would just jam, sit in a room, and traditionally see, beat some music out of us and see what happens.
Yeah, and the product, the album that resulted from this is a good testament to a reminder to us that technology, even though it has all of its flaws and our propensity to addict on it, as you've been saying, it also is a wonderful resource and allows things to come together. Like you can record an album in 6 months in 4 separate studios. Yeah.
Exactly, and if you look back, even in 10 years ago, you wouldn't. It just wasn't affordable at this level of quality, and we certainly wouldn't have been able to do the record if we would with the budget that we had. It wouldn't have been half the record it is. If we'd had to have hired a big recording studio, gone there for say 3 weeks, then your budget's gone. I mean, 3 weeks in a big studio is expensive. And there would have been a lot of pressure and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely pros and cons. I mean, in many ways, we might have had too much time because 6 months living and breathing, songwriting and recording an album is mentally very, very tiring. Mm-hmm. And I remember right in the middle of the album, I was thinking, oh my God, am I going to get through this? Because Gavin was pushing us hard. Everyone was pushing each other hard, I was coming up with some ideas and people were saying, no, Bruce, this isn't really working. You'd go back and try harder. And it was, so we pushed each other to the limits. And looking back on it, it was hard then, but now it's easy to think, wow, it was great. But you know, to get that album as good as it was tiring.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that Gavin now is a full member of the band, and I'm curious, how did bringing him into the fold originally come about?
Well, yeah, after we did Magnolia, that was 3 albums ago now, so including this one.
Right.
And the drummer left after that record. He just couldn't commit, you know, because I think like anyone who tries to run a band nowadays, it's very, very hard to commit to, you know, in today's landscape to make a living out of being in a band. So we were stuck. We were without a drummer. Regardless, I carried on writing. And we didn't know what to do. And I had all these demos with programmed drums on. And I spoke to our label, Kscope. And they said, well, why don't you try Gavin Harrison? And I never really thought of asking Gavin, mainly because obviously he was touring with King Crimson and the Porcupine Tree history. And but then when I spoke to him and sent him the demos, and you know, he was initially obviously he's very coy because he has a lot of people asking him if to drum.
Sure.
But I think when we got to know each other and he heard the songs, he got really quite. It was quite encouraging to how motivated he was, and all of a sudden it was like, oh right, okay, this is going to work. And when he sent us through his first drum tracks, it was like, oh my god, this is perfect, absolutely perfect. It's like he completely understood where we were coming from and where I was coming from, and so yeah, it was a real. It was obviously we were in the same kind of progressive sphere, so and the label, you know, Gavin released his O5 Brick stuff. On Kscope, not to mention all the Porcupine Tree back catalogue. So there was a connection, but I think musically it was the fact that we were just on the same page. It just worked. So and so yeah, so that the rest is history now. You know, we were connected by Kscope, and we just got on.
Yeah, fantastic. So nice to have him having a band outlet like this. You know, in addition to the King Crimson material, but now really being a member with you guys is extremely exciting. Yeah. So you were able to leave your quote day job a couple of years back, if I'm correct, and now you do music full time. So I'm curious how, now that you're a full time musician, how has that impacted your experience of recording Pineapple Thief albums since that time?
It's very strange because you go and from an existence where you have a day job where you're really frustrated during the day because you're not doing what you want to do. You want to make music, and so you come home from your day job and you have so much energy that you run to your studio and you write and you use what little time you have. You would just really go for it, and it's not really sustainable because it was starting to have an impact on my family, on my life, because there was no time for the important things, which is like obviously spending time with my family and things like that. But it served us well, and it kept the band together, and it kept us releasing albums. And you move from that to waking up in the morning and thinking, right, I'm walking into my studio, which is in my house. It's in the roof room, attic room of my house. That's today. My job is to write a song, or today is my job is to mix this track to make it. You know, and it's a very, very different mindset. And so yeah, it's difficult because there's not. I mean, you read all the people like Devin Townsend just admitted that he's not making any money from touring. He toured for 11 months, didn't make any money, and you think, really, that's very surprising, but not really surprising because I know where the money goes when you tour, and I know where the money goes when you release a record. You know, when you have all these streams on YouTube, and the artist doesn't get any money. So making it full time is a challenge, and I mean I'm really lucky that I've managed to make ends meet from doing it. I mean, I still mix other bands, you know, to pay the bills, and so it's you know, I'm not a millionaire by any stretch of the imagination, but it's so nice to be able to just say, right, for 8-9 hours during the day I'm going to make music, and then in the evening I'm going to spend time with my family. It's a real, you know, very lucky man.
So did that impact this, like, last album, for example? You said it was a 6-month process, and was it really a totally different experience for you now, just being able to focus just on that album for 6 months and not having the day job?
Yeah, yes, it was. I think, and what I realised is that you could then have a mindset that, okay, this song is sounding good, but let's make it sound great. And to get it to go from good to great is where you really have to put the hard graft in, to get that to get ahead of the pack, like the head of the peloton or whatever it is. You need to have that train so hard to get that little edge, and that's what I found it was spending days on lyrics, laboring over them, over the words, and getting them as good as they possibly could be. And I think one of the arts that I've learned over 20 years of writing for the Pineapple Thief is understanding when things are good enough, when you know that they are good enough. And so quite often it's very easy for your brain to say, Bruce, that's good enough,
Mm-hmm.
but actually deep down, is it really good enough? It could be better. And that's what I really learn, is to not settle for anything that if there's a little voice in your stomach telling you that's not really quite good enough, it's not as good as you could get it if you really, really bust your ass doing it. And so that's what I found I could do. And it is exhausting, I have to say, and especially when you're laboring over this, even one sentence of a chorus where when you sing it that it's not quite right.
Mm.
And then, but when you do get that word, when you get it, it's like, thank God for that. But you can I could spend a week on a song that would eventually end up in the bin. And so to think that you spent a whole week labouring and working on this thing, and that ultimately never cuts it, you've got to be quite mentally strong to understand that that's part of the process and to move on.
Right. How would you say your live audience has evolved over the years?
It's funny. It's always sort of grown very, very sort of gradually. But I think when Gavin came on board and we released Your Wilderness, we got to a whole new bunch of listeners. And I think Gavin's profile as a drummer is huge, but he's also got an awful lot of fans who just follow him musically. He's got a lot of drumming fans, but he's also got a lot of music fans that are interested in what he does. And when we went out with Gavin on tour last time, we saw our audience double overnight. And
wow.
So it's been very encouraging. And again, the tour that we're coming on, going out this September and early next year, sales again are doubling. Some of the venues are sold out, nearly sold out already, and that's 2 months away from the show. So it's after I don't know how many 15 years of playing. We've played in big rooms with 20 people in there, so we know what it's like to work your way up from how soul destroying it can be to go out on the road and to not sell tickets. And so it's nice to think that we finally sort of earned our way up the ladder and also you can finally justify touring and coming back without breaking the bank.
Exactly.
So it's been good.
Yeah. So what's a good night for you in terms of crowd attendance these days?
Well, I think now we're sort of looking at sort of the 800 to 1,000s. Cologne and London, we're looking at over 1,000 on the tour. But I think sort of average gate now is like 400 or 500. So, and that's the thing, when you start to think, when you start to get into doubling, the exponential curve. Doubling 500 to 1,000 is a massive amount, and doubling 1,000 to 2,000. And the other thing about the numbers game, is that there's a break-even point, and until you get to that break-even point, the band loses money.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you get past that break-even point, and every new person that comes in is money that obviously, when everyone else taking a cut, is actually coming into the band, and the band actually gets paid. So all of a sudden, you start to realise that there's money to be made from touring, which is why I find it very, very surprised that Devin Townsend was losing money with his tours. But
too big a production, I guess. Yeah.
Pardon?
You must have too big a production.
Yeah, too many people on tour. Yeah, get rid of the projections. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean that's what Steven Wilson says. He doesn't make any money touring because he insists on such a quality production. So he focuses more on making the money on the albums. But
he does. I mean, I'm sure he must make money now. Selling out 5,000 arenas. Sold out an arena in Amsterdam with 5,000 people. So if he's not making money from that, I'd be a bit depressed. But yeah, I mean, I opened for him in America, in the US, a few years ago as an acoustic show, and you could see they shipped all their gear. It's a heavy gear, amplifiers flying, across the world, and costs an out. Freight charges were, and unbelievable. So I could understand how much his touring costs.
Yeah, and I hear you might have some shows playing for the States in the new year too. Is that true?
Well, yeah, we got such a big call from fans in the States, every time. And we're looking at that's the other good thing about social media is you can actually see where everybody is. You can look on Spotify, where are our listeners? You look on Facebook, where are people coming from? And the USA is our biggest market. So yeah, we are planning to come in 2019. Probably just a couple of shows in the East Coast, Chicago, and then off to the West Coast. So fingers crossed. But the thing is, you just still a bit of a gamble because you just don't know how many people will turn up. And obviously, the thing about the USA is the visas that cost a fortune and things like that, and the travel. But I think the time has come. Time has come for us to come to the USA.
Yeah, it seems like a ripe time for it. And is it true that you used to suffer from stage fright before your live shows?
I did, and I think a lot of that was down to the fact that we weren't prepared. We were in bands, everybody was working, getting together to rehearse was difficult, and we'd end up going to these one or two festival shows that we would have in the summer, these big shows, but we were just never prepared. So I'd be terrified because I was thinking, if we can get through a song without completely cocking it up, then that's a victory. And then in hindsight, I just wish that we just didn't even bother. What we should have said is we either take this seriously and everybody takes the time to get the band as good as it should be, and you get rid of personnel who aren't good enough, no matter whether they're your friends or whatever, or you don't bother doing it at all. And so I look back on some of those early shows, and to get through it, I'd have to drink. Before I went on stage, and that impacted on the show, and so I learned the hard way, that's for sure. We did some really quite embarrassing shows in our time in the early days, and so yeah, luckily we've kind of sorted it out now. I'm glad that we didn't fold, and that we actually were able to figure out what we had to do.
So how did you overcome that yourself? Was it just knowing that the band was really well rehearsed and could deliver?
Yeah. I just all of a sudden realised that, oh God, yeah, actually I'm good at this, and having that mindset, it's very difficult not to let that overwhelm you, and you turn into. I can see why people, especially frontmen, can turn into big, quite arrogant, egocentric, characters, because that's what you have to be when you're on stage. You have to be that guy where you've got 1,000 people that have spent money to look at you. You have to be that guy that says, yes, you're looking at me. I'm Bruce Soord. Thank you very much. And, as soon as I had that feeling when I went on stage, then everything was fine. I played better, I sang better, didn't need a drop of alcohol before I went on. And the audience responded. And as soon as you realise and you feel the audience respond to you being confident and a little bit cocky, then you realise that you just keep going. You just keep going and giving them that. And then obviously I come out of that bubble as soon as I come off stage. You don't want to still be that guy. But that was the difference. And knowing that was a real key to me losing that stage fright.
And it still worked for you when you came home and your wife wasn't like, man, you're being a real ass.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you'd have to ask her. I probably am.
Yeah, there's about a week, it takes for you to come down after a tour, and then
exactly. He's like, do you know who I am? I'm Bruce Soord. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what this is? This is the trash can, and you're going to take out the garbage now. Yeah. So at this point, do you have a preference for solo headlining shows, or how about playing festivals where you aren't preaching to the choir, so to speak?
I think festivals is something that we're quite excited to do next year. I think now that we've established ourselves as a with our live lineup, we weren't able to do festivals this year because Gavin was away with King Crimson. So next year, I think I'd like the idea of actually, like you say, saying now we've got this confidence to be able to go out to the masses and say, right, check us out. I think that would I'd like the idea of both.
Yeah. There seems to be many parallels between your career and that of Steven Wilson. We mentioned him a little bit earlier. Do you embrace that association in the public eye, or at this point, would you rather try and distance yourself from it?
No, I didn't know what it's never been as big a problem as I thought it would be when we started out. I mean, when I started out, this is a band before Pineapple Thief, a band called Vulgar Unicorn. We were even being compared to Stephen's output then. I mean, this stuff, like Delirium, Up the Downstairs, and Sky Moves Sideways, that kind of era stuff. So there's been this comparison since day one. And when I started Pineapple Thief, I started to get reviews that were talking about PT or PT, and I thought, oh God, why have I picked Pineapple Thief, because it's the same as PT. So that's why I changed it to the Pineapple Thief, so at least we were TPT. So we were, but then things kind of just became that problematic, and nobody really seemed to give me a lot of hassle about it. And Stephen's been really kind over the years. He got me signed to Kscope effectively back in 2007. Mm-hmm. So we probably class each other as friends now. We've known each other for 12 years, and obviously being in the progressive rock world, we crossed paths quite a lot. So no, I don't think it's certainly not been a problem so far. I mean, and I was surprised when Gavin joined that we didn't get more. The old keyboard warriors giving us some grief online, and that hasn't really transpired.
Yeah, it sounds like you were prepared for that, but it didn't materialize, so that's good.
Well, it was, and I remember saying to Kscope when they mentioned getting Gavin, that was one of my reasons. I said, "Are you sure?" Because that would just play into a lot of people's hands, and thankfully it didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you also released a solo album a few years ago. Is this carving out a new trajectory for your creativity to complement the material in the Pineapple Thief?
Yeah, I think that's exactly that. I mean, now we've got the Pineapple Thief as a bona fide band, and it's really defined now. And now I can go off and do the singer-songwritery stuff as a solo record, and satisfy both my egos.
Nice. And then, of course, there was the Wisdom of Crowds album with Jonas from Catatonia. That was such a creative and progressive collaboration. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we were always talking about doing another one. Because I was talking to Jonas recently, because we both like football, and we were talking about the World Cup, because England knocked Sweden out actually, and so he wasn't very happy about that. But we were keep talking about doing another Wisdom of Crowds, but he's off. He's writing a new Catatonia record now, and just finishing a Bloodbath record, and they're very busy with touring and gigs. So we're just trying to find the time.
Yeah. How do you broaden your palette of songwriting techniques so that you don't repeat yourself or get stuck with familiar guitar techniques or hooks?
That's a good question, and it's a challenge, isn't it? And I think that's where that's why I think I made a conscious decision to let a lot go with this record, whereas I decided to just come up with really, really basic ideas and then let other people take it forward. Otherwise, I think it would have just been a number, Pineapple Thief by numbers, if I just, insisted on having too much control. But it's difficult, and I do sort of basic things like I've got a baritone acoustic guitar that's sort of tuned down to sort of B and C and C sharp.
Oh yeah, I got one of those too.
Yeah, it's lovely, and it just gives you a different timbre and a different feel, and then if you tune it to different open tunings, that sort of when you put your fingers on the chord on your guitar, expecting to play a chord that comes out completely different. That can just, it's just simple things like that can send you in a different direction. Mm-hmm. But they're pretty much, around, tinkering around the edges of songwriting, really, when you do things like that. I mean, I think most of it is down to mentally how you approach a new album. And it's always a massive challenge when you actually, one of the most frightening days is the first day of a new album, because you think, oh my God, what am I going to do? What kind of journey's ahead of you, and that you've got to come up with something new.
Right. After 12 albums, it's got to be daunting.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I always hear throughout so many of the songs on there. It seems like one of your favorite motifs is having these a backing track of harmonics. Keep it. I keep hearing these little harmonics going back, probably with the top two strings. It seems you have that layered in the background on a lot of songs.
Yeah, and especially the last couple of records.
Yeah,
the final thing on my mind, the chorus is just vocal and harmonics, and that's on an open C minor. I think it's that, and similarly on White Mist, that's got some sort of pinch harmonic lines, and I don't know why. I'm always attracted to that. I love the sound of a guitar when the natural harmonics are ringing out.
Yeah, and it's really nice having that consistent theme while the chords change underneath. It's a really cool effect, I think.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
Yeah. So just for a final question to bring it back to the album, what is one quality that you'd find satisfying for a listener to come away with after listening to Dissolution?
I think the main thing for me, and this is what we tried to set out, and one thing the whole band agreed at the beginning, is that we wanted it to be accessible. We wanted the melodies to hit people first listen, but for people to go away and go, oh my God, I have to listen to that again, and then for them to get more and more and more from each listen, and that's a real sort of pot of gold of songwriting that you aim for. For me personally, and I from people I've spoken to so far, I think we've certainly gone some way to achieve that, but I think people won't know till they listen.
Yeah. Well, let's close up with a track from the new album. You've chosen Threatening War. Do you want to set that up with a context for listeners?
Well, I picked Threatening War because it kind of covers the kind of whole gamut of what the Pineapple Thief is about. It's very delicate at the beginning. I was talking about accessible melodies that would hit you first time, and I think the chorus does that, and then it takes a little left turn in the middle section and gives you some meat to get your ears and your brain into, and I think that atmospherically and emotionally it certainly sort of hits the mark for me, and I remember when I wrote it, I thought, yes, talk about that idea of picking up a guitar and humming a melody. When I hummed the verse and the chorus on that, it was one of those moments where you think, yes, that's it, and sent it to Gavin, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll play that for everyone in just a moment. Bruce, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. Maybe we'll catch you here when you come through in the States next year, but all the best. You've got a European tour coming up, and I just hope it's fantastic for you, and like you said, the numbers of the audience keep doubling.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thanks very much.
All right, cheers.
Yeah, cheers, bye.
Bye.
Why don't you know you cannot leave before you get to go? You couldn't say how it got this far. You couldn't find a way. You couldn't know you were falling long before you received the blow. So you're threatening war, so go ahead and send it. So you're threatening war, so go ahead and send it. So you